A millionaire farmer pretends to be poor to uncover secrets at a car dealership. The receptionist becomes someone special in an unexpected transformation. A scandal threatens to destroy the company's reputation. The revelation of the wealthy farmer surprises everyone and changes the future entirely. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and let us know which city you're watching from. On the bustling Fifth Avenue, the heart of luxury automobiles in New York City, Premium Motors stood out among the most prestigious dealerships in the city. Its mirrored windows reflected the morning sun, while imported cars gleamed under the carefully positioned lighting of the showroom. It was an ordinary Thursday for the employees, but a special day for Theodore Evans, farmer and agribusiness entrepreneur, although no one there knew that. Theodore observed the dealership from across the street, sitting in a cafe. He wore a faded plaid shirt, worn jeans and dusty boots, a look purposely chosen for his social experiment. At 45 years old, his sun-weathered face carried the story of someone who had built his empire through hard work, starting from nothing. "It's time," he muttered to himself as he put his phone in his pocket. He had just exchanged messages with Richard Thompson, his longtime friend and owner of the factory that supplied vehicles to Premium Motors. The idea for the test had come up during a dinner when they were discussing recent complaints about discriminatory treatment in the dealership network. As Theodore walked through the automatic doors of Premium Motors, he was greeted by the air conditioning and the characteristic aroma of new cars. Mary Johnson, the receptionist, looked up from her computer and smiled genuinely. At 28 years old, with a degree in business administration, she was the first person customers saw when entering the store. "Good morning. Welcome to Premium Motors. How may I help you?" Mary asked with the same cordiality she devoted to all visitors. Before Theodore could answer, Charles Anderson, the store's most experienced salesman, approached with a poorly disguised look of displeasure. Tall, impeccably dressed in his Italian suit, he cast a sidelong glance at the visitor's dusty boots. "Can I help you?" he asked dryly, positioning himself between Theodore and a latest model Mercedes-Benz. "Yes, please. I'm interested in seeing some luxury models, especially that Mercedes over there," Theodore pointed, maintaining his humble demeanor. Charles let out a mocking laugh, exchanging glances with another nearby salesman. "Sir, these are high-end vehicles. The model you pointed to costs over $1 million. Perhaps it's better to look for something more suitable for your profile." Mary observed the scene with evident discomfort, her hands restless on the keyboard. She tried to intervene. "Charles, maybe we could show our complete line to the customer." "It's not necessary, Mary," Charles cut her off. "I'm sure the gentleman will find more appropriate options at other dealerships." Theodore maintained his calm. Years of business experience had taught him the value of patience. "I'd like to speak to the manager, please." "The manager is in a meeting and cannot be disturbed," Charles replied, his voice laden with disdain. "I suggest you leave. We have important customers to attend to." Mary stood up, visibly upset. "Sir, if you'll allow me, I can take down your information and schedule a more appropriate time for—" "That won't be necessary," Theodore responded gently, addressing Mary specifically. "Thank you for your attention. I'll come back another time." As he walked towards the exit, Theodore mentally registered every detail: the looks of contempt, the whispers among salesmen, Mary's embarrassment. Outside, he took out his cell phone again and typed a message to Richard. "Friend, the situation is worse than we imagined, but I found a diamond in the rough amidst the gravel." Inside the dealership, Mary thoughtfully observed the silhouette of the man walking away, while Charles and the other salesmen laughed and made derogatory comments. She couldn't imagine that that seemingly ordinary moment would mark the beginning of a great transformation in her life and in the history of Premium Motors. The afternoon sun was beginning to set on Fifth Avenue, and Theodore, now in his private car, was planning his next visit. Next time, he would show a very different face to Premium Motors, and the consequences would be more profound than anyone could predict. A week after the incident, Premium Motors was receiving another busy morning. The New York sun had barely risen when Mary was organizing her desk, preparing for another day of work. Her thoughts still returned to the poorly received customer from the previous week. There was something different about him, a silent dignity that contrasted with the treatment he received. The automatic doors opened and Mary looked up. For a moment, she hesitated to recognize the figure entering. It was the same man, but completely transformed. Theodore Evans appeared wearing an impeccably cut Armani suit, shiny Italian shoes, and a discreet Rolex on his wrist. His hair was perfectly trimmed, and his posture exuded a natural authority that was previously carefully disguised. Charles Anderson, who was arranging some catalogues, turned instantly upon perceiving the imposing presence. His face paled slightly as he recognized the features of the visitor from the previous week. He quickly composed his best commercial expression and advanced towards Theodore. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Premium Motors. How can I help you today?" Theodore ignored Charles's extended hand and headed directly to the reception. "Good morning, Mary," he said, surprising her by using her name. "Could you please announce me to the manager? Tell him Theodore Evans would like a word." Mary noticed Charles's sudden nervousness upon hearing the name. Theodore Evans was known in the market. His group was one of the largest in American agribusiness, with farms in 3 states. "Mr. Evans," Charles intervened, his voice now mellifluous, "please forgive me for the misunderstanding last week. I didn't recognize you and—" "Don't worry," Theodore interrupted him with a cold smile. "Your sincerity that day was enlightening." The buzz in the showroom increased. Other salesmen approached, curious and apprehensive. Mary, maintaining her professional composure, made the call to management. "Mr. Evans, unfortunately, Mr. Albert is in a meeting at the moment, but—" "It's all right, Mary," Theodore reassured her. "I'll wait. In the meantime, I'd like to see that Mercedes again that interested me last week. Charles, can you show me? Or are you also busy?" The salesman swallowed hard, adjusting his tie. "It would be my pleasure, Mr. Evans. Please, follow me." As Charles nervously presented the vehicle's features, Theodore observed the changes in the team's behavior. The same salesmen who days before had mocked him now elbowed each other to get his attention. Only Mary maintained the same professional and kind demeanor as before. During the presentation, Theodore's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Richard Thompson. "How's the second act of our little experiment going?" "Exactly as we expected," Theodore replied. "Prepare for the next phase." The manager, Albert Smith, finally appeared. Profusely apologizing for the delay, he was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a well-cut suit that couldn't completely disguise his anxiety. "Mr. Evans, what an honor to receive you at our dealership. Please, let's go to my office. We'll be more comfortable." "That won't be necessary, Albert," Theodore responded calmly. "I just came to observe how your team treats customers when they arrive wearing different clothes. I must say it was an interesting experience." The silence that followed was deafening. Albert nervously looked at Charles, who seemed to have lost all color in his face. The other salesman discreetly moved away, trying to appear busy with other activities. "Mary," Theodore called, making the receptionist look up, "you were the only person who treated me with dignity on both occasions. That says a lot about your character." Before leaving, Theodore turned to Albert. "You'll be hearing from us soon. I suggest you use this time to reflect on the true meaning of customer service." As he walked towards the exit, Theodore knew his visit would cause shockwaves through the dealership. What no one there imagined was that this was just the beginning of a much bigger transformation that was to come. Mary observed Theodore's departure with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Something told her that her professional life was about to change drastically, although she couldn't yet imagine how much. The morning after Theodore Evans's visit, the atmosphere at Premium Motors was charged with tension. Manager Albert Smith had called an emergency meeting with the entire team before the store opened. The showroom, normally a space of elegance and sophistication, now seemed like a courtroom where everyone anxiously awaited the verdict. Mary arrived early, as usual, and immediately noticed the change in the environment. The salesmen, usually confident and relaxed, were visibly nervous. Charles Anderson, in particular, seemed to have aged years overnight, his deep dark circles betraying a sleepless night. At 8 a.m. sharp, Albert emerged from his office, his face a mask of concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing in the tense silence, "we are facing an unprecedented crisis." He paused dramatically, his eyes scanning each face in the room. "Yesterday we received a visit from Theodore Evans, one of the most influential businessmen in American agribusiness. But it wasn't his first visit, was it?" Charles visibly shrank, while murmurs ran through the group. "Last week," Albert continued, Mr. Evans tested us. He came dressed as a simple man, and the treatment he received was, he hesitated, searching for the right word, deplorable. Mary observed the scene with a mixture of compassion and apprehension. She knew she hadn't participated in the mistreatment, but she felt the weight of the situation on everyone. Albert proceeded, his voice becoming graver. I received a call this morning. The factory is temporarily suspending our vehicle supply. The shock was palpable. Some salesmen gasped, others exchanged panicked looks. Premium Motors without new cars was like a restaurant without food. This means, Albert continued, struggling to maintain composure, that we need to sell every car in our inventory as if our lives depended on it. Because, frankly, our jobs do depend on it. Charles, seeming to have found a thread of courage, raised his hand tremblingly. Mr. Albert, what if we apologized to Mr. Evans? Maybe he could intervene with the factory. Albert shook his head. It's not that simple, Charles. The problem is bigger than a single mistreated customer. It's about our culture, our values as a company. At that moment, to everyone's surprise, Mary stepped forward. Mr. Albert, if I may, perhaps this is an opportunity to rethink our approach with customers, not just to save the company, but to truly become better at what we do. A surprised silence fell over the group. Albert looked at Mary with a mixture of curiosity and relief. Go on, Mary. What do you suggest? Well, she began, feeling all eyes on her. What if we implemented a training program focused on humanized service? Something that would teach us to treat each customer with respect, regardless of their appearance or status. Albert considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. It's an interesting idea, but who could lead something like this? Before Mary could answer, the reception phone rang, echoing in the silence of the room. She hurried to answer it, aware that everyone was watching her. Premium Motors, good morning, she said in her usual professional tone. The voice on the other end was familiar. Good morning, Mary. This is Theodore Evans. Could I speak with Mr. Albert, please? Mary looked at Albert, who was already walking towards her, extending his hand for the phone. She handed it over, silently mouthing, Mr. Evans. Albert took a deep breath before answering. Mr. Evans, good morning. What can I do for you? The conversation that followed was brief, but with each of Albert's words, the faces of the employees showed a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. When he hung up, Albert seemed to have aged a decade in minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice trembling, Mr. Evans and the factory owner will be here tomorrow for a meeting. They have a proposal for us, a last chance, so to speak. The buzz spread through the room. Mary felt a chill in her stomach, a mixture of fear and excitement. Something told her that her training suggestion wasn't by chance, and that the events of the next few days would change not only Premium Motors, but her own life in ways she could hardly imagine. Albert raised his hands, asking for silence. Until then, we'll continue operating normally. Mary, he turned to her, prepare a presentation on your training idea. It might be our lifeline. As the team dispersed, each absorbing the news in their own way, Mary returned to her desk, her mind already working on the presentation. The future of Premium Motors was at stake, and she was determined to do her part to save it. The next morning, Premium Motors had an air of nervous expectation. The employees arrived earlier, adjusting their clothes and rehearsing smiles in the mirror. Mary, who had barely slept preparing her presentation, was feverishly organizing her desk, casting anxious glances at the door every few minutes. At 9 a.m. sharp, the doors opened. Theodore Evans entered, accompanied by a serious-looking man whom everyone recognized as Richard Thompson, the factory owner. Albert hurried to greet them, his tense smile betraying his apprehension. Mr. Evans, Mr. Thompson, welcome to Premium Motors, said Albert, extending his hand. Please follow me to the meeting room. As the group headed to the back of the store, Mary noticed the curious and fearful looks of the salesmen. Charles, in particular, seemed about to faint. In the meeting room, Theodore took the floor as soon as everyone was settled. Gentlemen, we're here because the situation is grave. The behavior demonstrated at this dealership is unacceptable and goes against everything our brand represents. Richard nodded, his face a mask of disapproval. We suspended the supply not just as punishment, but as a warning. Premium Motors has always been one of our best dealers, but we can't ignore such serious ethical problems. Albert, visibly disturbed, leaned forward. We understand the gravity of the situation, gentlemen. We're willing to do whatever is necessary to correct our mistakes. Theodore exchanged a look with Richard before continuing. We have a proposal. A last chance, if you prefer. We're going to implement an intensive customer service training program, focusing on respect, empathy, and ethics. And who would lead this program? Asked Albert, a spark of hope in his eyes. It was at that moment that Mary, who was observing everything from her desk through the glass walls of the meeting room, saw Theodore point in her direction. Her heart raced when Albert beckoned her with a gesture. With trembling legs, Mary entered the room. "Gentlemen," Albert said, "this is Mary Johnson, our receptionist. She had a similar idea yesterday and prepared a presentation." Theodore smiled gently at Mary. "Miss Johnson, you were the only person in this store who treated me with dignity on both of my visits. I believe you're the ideal person to lead this transformation." Mary felt the weight of all the gazes on her. Taking a deep breath, she began to present her training proposal, highlighting the importance of humanized and equal treatment. As she spoke, Mary noticed the approving looks from Theodore and Richard. She explained how the program could not only improve service, but also increase customer satisfaction and, consequently, sales. At the end of the presentation, a momentary silence took over the room. It was Richard who broke it. "Impressive, Ms. Johnson. Your vision is perfectly aligned with what we're looking for." Theodore nodded. "I completely agree. Mary, we'd like to offer you the position of Training and Development Manager. You would be responsible for implementing this program, not just here, but potentially across the entire dealership network." Mary was speechless, unable to find words for a moment. I'm honored, gentlemen, but I don't have management experience. You have something more valuable," Theodore interrupted. "Integrity and a clear vision of what needs to be done." Albert, who had been silent until then, finally spoke. "Mary, I think this is an incredible opportunity for you and for Premium Motors." Feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a wave of determination, Mary nodded. "I accept the challenge, gentlemen. I'll do my best to transform not just this store, but the culture of the entire network." Theodore smiled, satisfied. "Great. Richard and I will provide all the necessary support. Albert, you'll work directly with Mary to implement the changes." As the details were being discussed, Mary looked through the glass to the showroom. She saw the anxious faces of her colleagues, especially Charles, who looked a mixture of fear and curiosity. She knew the path would be difficult, that she would face resistance and challenges, but she was determined to make a difference. At the end of the meeting, as everyone was getting up to leave, Theodore approached Mary. "Congratulations, Mary. I have high expectations for your work." And he hesitated for a moment, a different glint in his eyes. "I hope we can talk more about your ideas soon. Maybe over dinner?" Mary felt her cheeks flush slightly, surprised by the unexpected invitation. "It would be a pleasure, Mr. Evans." As she watched Theodore and Richard leave, Mary took a deep breath. Her life had changed completely in a matter of days. Now, with a new position, a great challenge ahead, and possibly a new relationship on the horizon, she wondered what other surprises the future held. In the week following the meeting that changed the course of Premium Motors, Mary found herself immersed in a whirlwind of activities. Her new office, previously an underutilized meeting room, was now the epicenter of a cultural revolution at the dealership. Early in the morning, Mary was adjusting the final details of her inaugural presentation when she heard a soft knock on the door. It was Charles Anderson, the once arrogant salesman, now with an expression that mixed apprehension and curiosity. "Good morning, Mary, or should I say Mrs. Manager," he said, trying a hesitant smile. Mary invited him in with a welcoming gesture. "Good morning, Charles. Mary is still fine. How can I help you?" Charles hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I wanted to apologize for my previous behavior. And also, I'm a bit nervous about this new program." The sincerity in Charles's voice surprised Mary. "I appreciate your apologies, Charles, and as for the program, it's natural to feel apprehensive. But I believe we all have the potential to grow and improve." As they talked, Mary realized that the transformation wouldn't just be about training skills, but also about changing mindsets and healing emotional wounds. At 10 a.m., all Premium Motors employees were gathered in the showroom, temporarily transformed into an impromptu auditorium. The nervousness was palpable, but there was also a spark of hope in many eyes. Mary climbed onto the small stage that had been set up, feeling the weight of all eyes on her. She took a deep breath and began. "Good morning, everyone. We are here today not just to save our jobs or the reputation of Premium Motors. We are here to rediscover the true meaning of customer service, respect, and human dignity." As Mary presented the training program, she saw expressions change. Some looked skeptical, others interested, and some, like Charles, seemed to be having an epiphany. "This won't be an easy path," Mary continued. "We'll have to unlearn old habits and embrace a new way of thinking. But I believe that together we can create something extraordinary here." At the end of the presentation, Mary opened the floor for questions. To her surprise, it was Charles who raised his hand first. "Mary," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "how can we be sure we're not just pretending to be better to save our jobs?" A tense silence fell over the room. Mary smiled gently. "Excellent question, Charles. The truth is that at first it may feel like acting, but with practice and reflection, these new behaviors will become natural. It's like learning a new language. At first you translate in your head, but over time you start thinking in that language." The answer seemed to calm not only Charles but several other employees. Mary continued, "In the coming days we'll do practical exercises, role-playing and group discussions. I want everyone to feel comfortable sharing their doubts and challenges." As the meeting dispersed, Mary noticed Albert observing from afar, a mix of admiration and concern on his face. She approached him. "Albert, I know this transition isn't easy for you either. How are you feeling?" The manager sighed deeply. "To be honest, Mary, I'm scared, but also hopeful. You have a gift for this." Mary placed a comforting hand on Albert's shoulder. "We're all learning together. Your leadership will be crucial in this process." That night, exhausted but satisfied, Mary finally had a moment to check her phone. There was a message from Theodore. "I heard great comments about the start of the program. Congratulations. Is that dinner still on?" Mary smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. She responded affirmatively, setting it for the weekend. As she prepared to go home, Mary reflected on the day. It was just the beginning, and she knew there would be challenges ahead. But something told her that this journey would not only transform Premium Motors, but also herself, in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Outside the dealership, the lights of São Paulo began to shine, symbolizing for Mary the infinite possibilities that the future held. With a determined smile, she set off, ready to face whatever lay ahead. 2 months passed since the beginning of the training program at Premium Motors. The showroom, once a stage of fierce competition among salespeople, now breathed a different atmosphere. Motivational posters decorated the walls, reminding everyone about empathy and humanized service. Mary walked through the space, closely observing the interactions. She noticed Charles, formerly the most arrogant of salespeople, patiently talking to an elderly customer about car specifications. His smile was no longer forced, but genuine. However, not everything was rosy. In a corner, Mary noticed Roger, a veteran salesman, rolling his eyes while another colleague practiced the new service techniques. She made a mental note to talk to him later. "Mary, do you have a minute?" Albert's voice pulled her from her thoughts. They headed to the manager's office. Albert looked worried. "Sales still haven't reacted as we expected," he began, showing some graphs. "The factory is pressuring for results." Mary nodded, understanding. "Cultural changes take time, Albert, but I'm seeing significant progress in the team." I know, Albert sighed. "But some of the older salespeople are resisting. They think we're getting too soft." At that moment, a knock on the door interrupted the conversation. It was Roger. "Excuse me," he said, his voice laden with sarcasm. "I just wanted to know if I should offer a hug and a cup of tea before talking about financing rates." Mary took a deep breath, keeping her calm. "Roger, why don't we talk about your concerns? I'm sure we can find a balance." Roger snorted. "Balance? We're losing sales because of this goodwill circus." The tension in the air was palpable. Mary was about to respond when her phone vibrated. It was a message from Theodore. "Hope everything is okay. I remember when I implemented changes on my farms. Resistance is natural, but persistence is crucial." Those words gave Mary an idea. "Roger, Albert, how about we do something different? Let's organize a field day at Mr. Evans' farm. The whole team, salespeople, mechanics, everyone. An opportunity to reconnect outside this environment." The suggestion caught both by surprise. Albert seemed to consider the idea, while Roger frowned, intrigued. "And how is this going to help us sell cars?" Roger questioned. Mary smiled. "Sometimes to move forward, we need to take a step back and remember why we do what we do. Trust me." After some negotiations and planning, the idea was approved. The following Saturday, the entire Premium Motors team met at Theodore's farm, 2 hours from São Paulo. The day began with team-building activities. Salespeople who normally competed now had to collaborate on fun challenges. Mary watched with satisfaction as barriers began to fall. During lunch, Theodore gathered everyone for a talk. "I know many of you are wondering why you're here today," he began. "Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I was just a young man from the countryside, dreaming of making it big in the big city. When I finally gathered the courage to enter a luxury dealership, I was treated exactly as I treated Mr. Evans weeks ago." A stunned silence fell over the group. Theodore continued. "That experience almost made me give up, but instead, I used it as motivation. I promised myself that one day I would come back, not for revenge, but to change things." He looked directly at Roger. "We're not asking you to stop being salespeople. We're asking you to be human first. Sales will come as a consequence." Theodore's words seemed to have touched something deep in many present. Mary saw tears in the eyes of some, including Charles. At the end of the day, as everyone prepared to return, Roger approached Mary. "Look, maybe I've been too harsh. I think I can give this new way of doing things a chance." Mary smiled, feeling that they were finally turning an important page. On the bus back to São Paulo, the atmosphere was one of renewal. Animated conversations, laughter, and plans for the future filled the air. Mary sat next to Theodore, both observing the transformation that was taking place. "You've done an amazing job," Theodore said softly. Mary blushed slightly. "We did it. Together." As the sun set on the horizon, Mary knew there was still much work ahead. But now, more than ever, she believed that true change was possible. And perhaps, just maybe, something more was blossoming between her and Theodore, something that went beyond the professional. The bus continued down the road, taking back to São Paulo a transformed team, ready to face new challenges and, who knows, revolutionize an entire industry. As the bus wound its way back to São Paulo, Mary found herself lost in thought, reflecting on the incredible journey of the past few months. The gentle hum of conversations around her served as a backdrop to her musings. She glanced at Theodore, who was engaged in an animated discussion with some of the salespeople, his eyes alight with passion as he shared his vision for the future of Premium Motors. The following week, the energy at the dealership was palpable. The team returned from the farm trip with renewed enthusiasm and a deeper understanding of the changes they were implementing. Mary noticed a significant shift in attitudes, even among those who had been the most resistant. One morning, as Mary was reviewing some customer feedback reports in her office, there was a soft knock on her door. It was Charles, the once arrogant salesman who had become one of the strongest advocates for the new approach. "Mary, do you have a moment?" he asked, an excited gleam in his eyes. "Of course, Charles, what's on your mind?" Mary replied, gesturing for him to take a seat. Charles sat down, leaning forward eagerly. "I just wanted to share something amazing that happened yesterday. Remember Mr. Johnson, the customer who had been giving us a hard time for weeks?" Mary nodded, recalling the notoriously difficult client who had been on the verge of taking his business elsewhere. "Well," Charles continued, "I decided to try that new approach we learned at the farm. Instead of pushing for a sale, I just listened to him, really listened. And you know what? He opened up about why he was so hesitant. Turns out he had a terrible experience with a car dealership years ago and had been wary ever since." Mary listened intently, a smile growing on her face as Charles recounted his experience. "So, I shared our new philosophy with him, explained how we're changing the way we do business. And Mary, he was so impressed that he not only decided to buy from us, but also said he'd recommend us to all his friends and colleagues." The excitement in Charles's voice was contagious. Mary felt a surge of pride, not just for Charles's success, but for the tangible evidence that their efforts were making a real difference. "That's wonderful, Charles," Mary exclaimed. "This is exactly the kind of change we've been working towards. Thank you for sharing this with me." As Charles left her office, Mary couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. These small victories were the building blocks of the larger transformation they were striving for. Over the next few weeks, similar stories began to emerge from other members of the team. Sales were steadily increasing, but more importantly, customer satisfaction scores were soaring. The atmosphere in the dealership had transformed from one of cutthroat competition to collaborative success. However, not everything was smooth sailing. One afternoon, Mary received an urgent call from Albert, asking her to come to his office immediately. When she arrived, she found Albert looking stressed, poring over a stack of papers. "Mary, we have a situation," Albert began, his voice tight with concern. "The regional manager just called. Apparently, some of our competitors have been spreading rumors about our new approach. They're telling potential customers that we've gone soft and that we can't offer competitive deals anymore." Mary felt a knot form in her stomach. They had anticipated some pushback from the industry, but this direct attack caught her off guard. "How bad is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Albert sighed heavily. "We've lost a few big corporate contracts in the last week. If this continues, it could seriously impact our bottom line." Mary took a deep breath, her mind racing. They had come too far to let this derail their progress. "Okay," she said, determination setting in. "We need to address this head-on. Let's call an emergency meeting with the team. We'll develop a strategy to counter these rumors and showcase the real benefits of our new approach." As they gathered the team, Mary couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and resolve. This was their first major test since implementing the new program. How they handled this challenge would be crucial in determining the long-term success of their efforts. The meeting room was buzzing with nervous energy as Mary stood to address the team. She could see the worry etched on their faces, but also a glimmer of the determination they had all cultivated over the past months. "Team," Mary began, her voice clear and steady, "we're facing our first major hurdle. Our competitors are spreading misinformation about our new approach, and it's starting to affect our business." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. Mary held up her hand, silencing the whispers. "But here's the thing," she continued, her eyes scanning the faces before her. "We know the truth. We've seen firsthand the positive impact of our new philosophy. Now it's time to show the world." Over the next few hours, the team brainstormed ideas on how to combat the negative rumors. They decided on a multi-pronged approach: a targeted marketing campaign highlighting their customer satisfaction scores, testimonials from happy clients, and an open house event to showcase their new way of doing business. As the meeting concluded, Mary felt a surge of pride. The team's enthusiasm and creativity in the face of this challenge were inspiring. They were no longer just employees following a new policy. They were true believers in the power of ethical, customer-centric business practices. In the days that followed, everyone threw themselves into implementing their plan. The marketing team worked overtime to create compelling ads and social media content. Salespeople reached out to satisfied customers, collecting heartfelt testimonials. Even the mechanics got involved, preparing the showroom and service area for the open house event. The day of the open house arrived, and Mary arrived at the dealership early, her stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. As she walked through the showroom, making last-minute adjustments, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Looks like you've been busy," Theodore said, a warm smile on his face. Mary turned, feeling a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with nerves. "Theodore, I didn't expect you to be here today." He stepped closer, his eyes twinkling. "And missed the chance to see you in action?" "Not a chance." Before Mary could respond, the doors opened and the first visitors began to arrive. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Potential customers, curious competitors, and even a few local reporters filled the showroom. Mary watched with pride as her team put their training into practice. Charles expertly guided a family through their options, focusing on understanding their needs rather than pushing for a sale. In the service area, mechanics patiently explained maintenance procedures to interested onlookers, emphasizing transparency and trust. As the day progressed, Mary overheard snippets of conversation that made her heart soar. "I've never felt so comfortable in a car dealership before. They really seem to care about what we need, not just making a sale. I had no idea car buying could be this pleasant." By the time the last visitor left, the team was exhausted but exhilarated. They gathered in the showroom, a sense of accomplishment hanging in the air. Albert stepped forward, a broad smile on his face. "I've just gotten off the phone with the regional manager," he announced. "Not only have we regained the contracts we lost, but we've also secured 3 new major corporate accounts. They were impressed by what they saw here today." A cheer erupted from the team. Mary felt tears prick at her eyes as she watched her colleagues celebrate. This was more than just a professional victory. It was validation of everything they had worked so hard to achieve. As the celebration wound down and people began to head home, Theodore approached Mary once again. "Congratulations," he said softly. "You should be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished here." Mary smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "It was a team effort," she replied modestly. Theodore shook his head, his eyes locked on hers. "It was your vision, your leadership, that made this possible. Mary, He paused, seeming to gather his courage. "I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me tomorrow night, to celebrate properly." Mary felt her heart skip a beat. The attraction that had been simmering between them for months suddenly felt very real and immediate. "I'd love to," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As they stood there, the last rays of sunlight streaming through the showroom windows, Mary felt a sense of possibility wash over her. She had transformed a business, inspired a team, and maybe, just maybe, found something truly special for herself along the way. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, stretched out before her, full of promise. And Mary was ready to embrace it all, both professionally and personally, with open arms. The next evening, Mary found herself standing in front of her closet, a flutter of nervous excitement in her stomach. She had been on countless business dinners before, but this was different. This was personal, a celebration with Theodore, and the implications made her both thrilled and anxious. She finally settled on a sleek black dress that was professional yet elegant. As she applied the finishing touches to her makeup, her phone buzzed with a message from Theodore. "Looking forward to tonight. I have a surprise planned." Mary's curiosity was piqued, but she didn't have much time to ponder as she heard a knock at her door. Opening it, she found Theodore standing there, looking dashing in a well-tailored suit, holding a small bouquet of tulips. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warm with admiration. Mary felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you," she replied, taking the flowers. "These are lovely." As they made their way to Theodore's car, Mary noticed it wasn't his usual luxury sedan. Instead, it was a classic convertible, gleaming under the streetlights. "I thought we'd take a little detour before dinner," Theodore explained with a mischievous grin. They drove through the city, the warm evening air tousling their hair. Mary felt a sense of freedom and joy she hadn't experienced in a long time. Theodore navigated through the streets with ease, eventually heading out of the city towards the countryside. "Where are we going?" Mary asked, intrigued. "You'll see," Theodore replied, his eyes twinkling with excitement. After about an hour's drive, they pulled up to what looked like an abandoned airfield. Mary's confusion must have shown on her face because Theodore chuckled. "Trust me," he said, taking her hand as they got out of the car. As they walked towards an old hangar, Mary noticed a small group of people gathered around something. As they got closer, she realized it was a hot air balloon, its vibrant colors standing out against the darkening sky. "Theodore," Mary gasped. "Are we—" He nodded, grinning widely. "I thought we could get a bird's-eye view of the city we're working so hard to change." Mary was speechless as they were helped into the basket. As the balloon began to rise, the world below them grew smaller, the city lights twinkling like stars on the ground. "This is incredible," Mary breathed, taking in the panoramic view. Theodore stood close beside her, his arm gently around her waist. "I wanted to show you the bigger picture," he said softly. "What we're doing at Premium Motors, it's not just about one dealership or even one company. It's about changing an entire industry, influencing how business is done. And from up here, you can see just how far our impact can reach." Mary turned to face him, moved by his words and the thoughtfulness of this gesture. In that moment, suspended above the world, she felt the last of her reservations melt away. She leaned in, and their lips met in a soft, tender kiss. As they parted, both slightly breathless, Theodore smiled. "I've been wanting to do that for a while now," he admitted. "Me too," Mary replied, her heart soaring higher than the balloon. They spent the rest of the flight pointing out landmarks, discussing their vision for the future, and simply enjoying each other's company. When they finally landed, Theodore had a picnic dinner waiting, set up under the stars. As they sat on the blanket, enjoying the gourmet spread and a bottle of champagne, Mary felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Here she was, embarking on both a professional and personal journey that excited and challenged her. "You know," Theodore said, refilling their glasses, "I've been thinking about expanding our training program beyond just premium motors." Mary raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Well, what if we could offer our ethical business practices training to other industries? Not just automotive, but retail, hospitality, any sector where customer service is key." Mary's mind began to race with possibilities. "That could be huge," she said, her excitement building. "We could create a consulting arm of the business, maybe even partner with universities to develop curriculum." Theodore nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. And who better to lead this initiative than the woman who made it all possible in the first place?" Mary felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Me? Lead a whole new division?" Theodore took her hand, his expression serious but encouraging. "Mary, what you've done at Premium Motors is nothing short of revolutionary. You have the vision, the skills, and the heart to make this work on an even larger scale." As they continued to discuss the idea, Mary felt her initial nervousness give way to determination. This was an opportunity to make a real, lasting impact on the business world, to promote ethical practices and human-centric approaches across multiple industries. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of exciting plans and tender moments. As Theodore drove Mary home, their hands intertwined, she felt like she was standing on the precipice of something truly extraordinary. At her doorstep, Theodore pulled her close. "Thank you for an amazing evening," he said softly. "Thank you for everything," Mary replied, her voice filled with emotion. "The balloon ride, the picnic, the incredible opportunity." Theodore smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You deserve it all, Mary, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish together, both professionally and personally." As they shared one more kiss goodnight, Mary felt a sense of certainty settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them with Theodore by her side. The next morning, Mary walked into Premium Motors with a renewed sense of purpose. The team could sense something was different, noticing the extra spring in her step and the glow in her cheeks. As she gathered everyone for the morning meeting, Mary took a deep breath. "Team, I have some exciting news to share," she began. "We're about to embark on a new adventure, one that will take everything we've learned here and apply it on a much larger scale." She went on to explain the idea of expanding their training program beyond Premium Motors, watching as expressions of surprise turned to excitement among her colleagues. "This means some big changes for all of us," Mary continued. "We'll be creating a new division focused on ethical business consulting, and I'll be leading that initiative." A murmur of congratulations rippled through the room, but Mary could also see flickers of concern on some faces. "I know what you're thinking," she said, addressing the unspoken worry. "You're wondering what this means for Premium Motors and the work we've done here. Let me assure you, this dealership will always be the heart of our operation, the living proof that our methods work. In fact, many of you will have the opportunity to become trainers and consultants yourselves, sharing your experiences with other businesses." As the meeting concluded and people began to disperse, buzzing with excitement about the new possibilities, Charles approached Mary. "Congratulations, Mary," he said warmly. "But I have to ask, who's going to lead us here at Premium Motors?" Mary smiled, having anticipated this question. "Actually, Charles, I was hoping to talk to you about that. How would you feel about stepping into a leadership role here?" Charles's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a salesman." "You're much more than that," Mary said firmly. "You've been one of the strongest advocates for our new approach, and you've shown incredible growth over these past months. I believe you have what it takes to keep Premium Motors on this positive trajectory." As Charles processed this information, his surprise slowly transformed into a determined smile. "I'd be honored," he said finally. "And I promise I won't let you down." The rest of the day was a whirlwind of activity, as Mary began the process of planning for the new consulting division while also preparing for her transition out of her current role. As challenging as it was, she felt energized by the new direction. That evening, as she was preparing to leave, she received a text from Theodore. "Dinner at my place tonight." "I'm cooking." Mary smiled, feeling a warm glow of happiness. She quickly texted back her acceptance and headed out, eager to share the day's developments with Theodore. When she arrived at his apartment, she was greeted by the mouth-watering aroma of a home-cooked meal. Theodore welcomed her with a kiss, leading her to a beautifully set table on the balcony, overlooking the city lights. As they settled in to eat, Theodore raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his eyes shining with affection and excitement. "To new beginnings," Mary echoed, clinking her glass against his. As they enjoyed their meal, Mary filled Theodore in on the events of the day: Charles's promotion, the team's reaction to the new consulting division, and her own whirlwind of emotions throughout it all. Theodore listened attentively, offering words of encouragement and insightful suggestions. As the evening wore on, their conversation shifted from work to more personal matters, their hopes, dreams, and the growing connection between them. Looking out over the city, Mary felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had come so far from that day when Theodore had first walked into Premium Motors, testing their customer service. Now she was on the brink of a new career adventure, with a blossoming relationship to boot. "You know," Theodore said, breaking into her thoughts, "I've been thinking about us, about the future." Mary turned to him, her heart quickening. "Oh?" Theodore took her hand, his expression serious but warm. "Mary, these past months have been incredible. Watching you transform Premium Motors, seeing your passion and dedication. It's made me fall in love with you more each day." Mary's breath caught in her throat. Though they had been growing closer, this was the first time either of them had used the word love. "I love you too, Theodore," she said softly, squeezing his hand. He smiled, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. "I know we're both about to get very busy with this new venture, but I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever challenges come our way, I want to face them together." Mary felt tears of joy prick at her eyes. "I want that too," she replied. As they sealed their commitment with a kiss, Mary felt like her heart might burst with happiness. The future stretched out before them, full of exciting professional challenges and the promise of a deep, lasting personal connection. In that moment, on Theodore's balcony with the city spread out below them, Mary knew that she had found something truly special. A partner in every sense of the word, someone to share both her professional ambitions and her personal dreams. As they continued to talk late into the night, making plans and sharing hopes for their future together, Mary felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had started this journey looking to change a business, but in the process, she had changed her own life in ways she never could have imagined. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, but with Theodore by her side and a clear vision of the positive impact they could make together, Mary felt ready for anything. This was more than just a new chapter in her life. It was the beginning of an entirely new book, one filled with promise, purpose, and love. As the night grew late and the city lights twinkled below, Mary and Theodore stood together on the balcony, arms around each other, looking out at the world they were prepared to change. The future was bright, and they were ready to embrace it, together. As the weeks passed, Mary and Theodore threw themselves into their new venture with enthusiasm and dedication. The ethical business consulting division, which they named Integrity Innovations, quickly began to take shape. They assembled a team of experts from various industries, combining their automotive experience with fresh perspectives from other sectors. Mary's days were filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and curriculum development. She worked tirelessly to create training programs that could be adapted to different industries, while maintaining the core principles of ethical business practices and customer-centric approaches. Theodore, meanwhile, leveraged his connections to secure their first clients, ranging from small local businesses to large corporations interested in overhauling their customer service practices. Despite their busy schedules, Mary and Theodore made sure to carve out time for their relationship. They would often work late into the night, side by side in Theodore's home office, bouncing ideas off each other and supporting one another through the challenges of starting a new business. These moments, though filled with work, became some of Mary's favorites, a testament to their compatibility both professionally and personally. One morning, about 3 months into their new venture, Mary received an unexpected call from Charles at Premium Motors. "Mary, you won't believe what just happened," Charles said, his voice brimming with excitement. "What is it, Charles?" Mary asked, her curiosity piqued. "Remember that difficult customer from last year, Mr. Johnson?" Charles began. "Well, he just came in with his entire extended family. They bought 4 cars from us in one day." Mary felt a surge of pride. "That's incredible, Charles. What made them choose Premium Motors?" "Mr. Johnson said it was because of how we treated him last time," Charles explained. "He told his family that we were the only dealership he could trust. Mary, it's all because of the changes you implemented. Your vision is still making a difference here." As Mary hung up the phone, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work they had done at Premium Motors was continuing to bear fruit, and now they had the opportunity to create that kind of positive change on an even larger scale. Later that day, as Mary was preparing for a meeting with a potential new client, a large hotel chain interested in revamping their customer service approach, Theodore burst into her office, his face alight with excitement. "Mary, you need to see this," he said, handing her a tablet. On the screen was an article from a prominent business magazine. The headline read, "Ethical Business Practices, the New Competitive Edge." As Mary skimmed the article, she realized it was featuring integrity innovations and the work they were doing. "They're calling us pioneers," Theodore said, his voice filled with pride. "The article suggests that our approach could be the future of business education and consulting." Mary felt a mix of excitement and humility wash over her. "This is amazing, Theodore, but we've only just begun. There's still so much work to do." Theodore nodded, taking her hand. "I know, but this recognition means we're on the right track. We're making waves, Mary. People are starting to pay attention." The article led to a flood of new inquiries and opportunities. Integrity Innovations was growing faster than they had anticipated, and soon they found themselves needing to expand their team and their office space. As they prepared to move into their new, larger offices, Mary took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. From a receptionist at a car dealership to the co-founder of a rapidly growing ethical business consultancy, her journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. The night before the official opening of their new office, Theodore surprised Mary with a private dinner in the still empty space. He had set up a small table in what would soon be the main conference room, complete with candles and a gourmet meal he had prepared himself. As they sat down to eat, Theodore raised his glass in a toast. "To us," he said, his eyes shining with love and admiration. "To the incredible woman who started this all with her unwavering commitment to doing what's right, and to the bright future we're building together." Mary felt her eyes well up with tears of joy. "To us," she echoed, clinking her glass against his. "And to all the lives we hope to change for the better." As they enjoyed their meal, they talked about their hopes and plans for the future, not just for the business, but for their life together. They discussed the possibility of expanding Integrity Innovations internationally, of writing a book about their experiences and methodology, and of eventually starting a foundation to promote ethical business practices in developing economies. "You know," Theodore said, reaching across the table to take Mary's hand, "I've been thinking a lot about our future lately, about how I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building this dream together." Mary's heart began to race as Theodore stood up and walked around the table to her side. As he got down on one knee, producing a small velvet box from his pocket, Mary felt tears of joy begin to fall. "Mary Silver," Theodore said, his voice full of emotion, "you have transformed not just a business but my entire world. Your passion, your integrity, and your love inspire me every day. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Mary breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, of course I will." As Theodore slipped the ring onto her finger, a beautiful, ethically sourced diamond, and pulled her into a deep kiss, Mary felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. This moment, in the empty office that represented their shared dreams and hard work, felt perfectly right. The next morning, as they prepared to welcome their team to the new office and embark on the next phase of their journey, Mary and Theodore stood hand in hand, matching rings glinting on their fingers. They were more than just business partners or a couple in love. They were a team, united in their vision for a more ethical, compassionate business world. As the first employees began to arrive, exclaiming over the new space and congratulating the newly engaged couple, Mary felt a profound sense of gratitude and purpose. She knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but with Theodore by her side and their shared commitment to making a positive impact, she was ready to face whatever came their way. The future stretched out before them, filled with possibilities. There would be more businesses to transform, more lives to touch, and a wedding to plan. But for now, as Mary looked around at their growing team and the bright open space of their new office, she felt nothing but excitement for the journey ahead. This was more than just a new chapter in her life or even a new book. It was a whole new library, filled with stories of change, growth, and the power of doing business with heart. And Mary couldn't wait to start writing those stories, with Theodore and their team, one ethical decision at a time. As the day progressed and they officially inaugurated their new office, Mary found herself constantly touching the ring on her finger, a tangible reminder of the beautiful fusion of her personal and professional lives. She and Theodore had found in each other not just romantic partners but true allies in their mission to change the business world for the better. The energy in the new office was electric. As team members settled into their workspaces and gathered for the first all-hands meeting in the spacious conference room, Mary could feel the excitement and dedication radiating from every person there. These were individuals who had chosen to be part of something bigger than themselves, committed to the idea that business could be both profitable and ethical. Standing at the front of the room with Theodore by her side, Mary addressed the team. "Welcome, everyone, to the new home of Integrity Innovations. As I look around this room, I'm filled with an incredible sense of hope and possibility. Each one of you brings unique skills and experiences to our team, but more importantly, you bring a shared commitment to our mission." She paused, making eye contact with various team members before continuing. "When we started this journey, many people told us it was impossible. They said that ethics and profitability couldn't coexist in the business world. But look at how far we've come. We're proving them wrong every single day with every client we help, with every business we transform." Theodore stepped forward, seamlessly taking over. "But we're just getting started. The work we're doing here has the potential to reshape entire industries, to change the very nature of how business is conducted. It won't be easy. There will be resistance, setbacks, and challenges we can't even anticipate yet. But I believe in this team, in our mission, and in the positive change we can create together." As they outlined their plans for the coming months, new client acquisitions, the development of industry-specific training programs, and their vision for global expansion, Mary could see the enthusiasm building in the room. Ideas were flowing, with team members offering suggestions and volunteering for new initiatives. After the meeting, as people dispersed to their desks buzzing with energy, Mary overheard snippets of conversation that made her heart swell with pride. "I never thought I'd be excited to come to work every day, but here I am. My family is so proud of the work we're doing here. It feels good to be part of something meaningful. I can't wait to see the look on our next client's face when they realize how much their business can improve by simply doing the right thing." As the day wound down, Mary found herself in her new office, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and the gentle hum of the city outside her window. Theodore knocked softly on her open door, a warm smile on his face. "How are you feeling?" he asked, crossing the room to perch on the edge of her desk. Mary leaned back in her chair, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "Overwhelmed, excited, a little terrified," she admitted with a chuckle, "but mostly I feel incredibly grateful for this opportunity, for our amazing team, and for you." Theodore reached out, taking her hand in his and running his thumb over her engagement ring. "I feel the same way. You know, when I walked into Premium Motors that day, pretending to be a difficult customer, I never imagined it would lead to all of this." Mary smiled at the memory. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it?" "That it does," Theodore agreed. "So, future Mrs. Evans, what do you say we head home and celebrate properly? We've got a successful first day in our new office and an engagement to toast to." As they left the office hand in hand, saying goodnight to the few team members still working late, Mary felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had found her purpose, her partner, and her path forward, all because she had stood up for what she believed was right. The city stretched out before them as they drove home, its lights twinkling like stars. To Mary, each light represented a potential change, a business that could be transformed, lives that could be improved. And with Theodore by her side and their dedicated team behind them, she knew that they had the power to ignite those changes. one ethical decision at a time. As they settled in for the evening, discussing wedding plans and business strategies with equal enthusiasm, Mary realized that this was just the beginning, the story of integrity innovations, of her life with Theodore, of their mission to change the business world. It was all just starting to unfold, and what a beautiful story it promised to be. While Mary and Theodore planned their future together, Integrity Innovations continued to grow and expand. Over the following years, their vision of a more ethical business world gradually became a reality. 5 years after the inauguration of their new offices, Integrity Innovations had become a force to be reckoned with in the business world. They had expanded their operations internationally, with offices in Europe, Asia, and South America. Their book, Business Ethics: The New Competitive Advantage, had become a bestseller and was required reading in many business schools. Mary and Theodore had married in a beautiful ceremony 2 years after their engagement, surrounded by family, friends, and colleagues who had been part of their incredible journey. Charles, who now successfully ran Premium Motors, was the best man. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they dined on the balcony of their apartment, overlooking the city they had helped transform, Mary and Theodore reflected on all they had accomplished. "Can you believe how much everything has changed in such a short time?" Mary asked, taking Theodore's hand. He smiled, his eyes shining with love and pride. "And it all started with you, with your courage to stand up for what was right at Premium Motors." Mary blushed slightly. "It was us, Theodore, your vision, your support. I couldn't have done it without you." At that moment, Mary's phone rang. It was a message from her assistant. The United Nations had accepted their proposal for a global business ethics program. "We did it!" Mary exclaimed, showing the message to Theodore. "The UN program, that it was approved!" Theodore hugged her tightly. "This is incredible, Mary. We're about to take our message to the world stage." As they celebrated this new victory, Mary thought about how far they had come. From a simple receptionist at a car dealership to being internationally recognized as a leader in business ethics. The road hadn't always been easy, but every challenge had made them stronger, both as a couple and as a business team. "You know," said Theodore, interrupting her thoughts, "there's something else we should celebrate." Mary looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" With a smile, Theodore pulled a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to Mary. With trembling hands, she opened it to find an ultrasound inside. "Are we?" Mary asked, tears springing from her eyes. Theodore nodded, his own voice breaking with emotion. "We're going to be parents, Mary." At that moment, embracing under the stars with the city they had helped change stretching out below them and the promise of a new life growing inside Mary, they both felt that their story had reached a new and beautiful chapter. Integrity Innovations would continue to grow, touching lives and transforming businesses around the world. Mary and Theodore would continue to lead the way towards a more ethical and compassionate business world, and now they would have the opportunity to pass on their values and passion to the next generation. As the sun set over the city, Mary and Theodore looked to the future with hope and determination. They knew the road ahead would be full of new challenges and opportunities, but they were ready to face them together, as they always had. The story that began in a car dealership had grown into a global movement. And although they had achieved so much, Mary and Theodore knew this was just the beginning. With a baby on the way and a world to change, their adventure was far from over. As night fell, Mary rested her head on Theodore's shoulder, feeling grateful for everything they had experienced and excited for everything that was to come. This was their story, a story of love, ethics, and the power of doing the right thing. And it would continue to unfold, touching lives and inspiring change for many years to come.